Well, thank you all for joining me today. And here's my very first guest on the fitness podcast, my good friend, Daniel Uwe. Hey, Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Jordan?
So I wanted to have you over because you are the foremost expert in all things that have to do with queerness and fitness in my mind.
Oh my God.
But first, can you tell me a little bit about your background? Where are you from?
Well, I hope to God I'm queer and possibly fit. I am from Toronto. My name is Daniel Uwe. I am mixed race. I am a queer man. I live in Toronto, and I am studying my Ph.D. in kinesiology at the University of Toronto. I did my master's in social anthropology at York, and I did my undergrad BA at TMU, formerly Ryerson. I got into health and fitness in my 20s, and now I'm not in my 20s. And I am 47, and I am in school, and it's been a decade, and I love it. And I wanted to keep going until they told me I can't leave. So yeah, and then if everything goes well, I'll be a doctor and get a job and still be in school.
And do you want to keep doing the research that you're doing? Well, let's actually talk a little bit more about the research that you're doing. So what actually is the topic that you study?
So in my master's, I ended up doing my research on racialized queer people within health and fitness. Specifically, I used my participants were getting ready for Pride. And so they were working out to get ready for Pride, and I had questions about Pride, working out for Pride, and also just about identity and what that meant for them, if working out and Pride were related. It was, especially with all the stuff that was happening around Black Lives Matter back in 2016, is Pride a protest? Is Pride a celebration? Is Pride both? Is it neither? And so I thought the best people to ask were racialized people who might have more of a say on what this means for them.
But did you find that they did have something to say on the topic? Did you find anything interesting in your research that you weren't expecting when you spoke to those racialized minorities?
I did. And so what was really exciting about the work that I got to do was first of all, I got the university to help pay for me to go to Pride Toronto and Montreal Pride for the summer of 2022 and fund me to, really research our lives, and the lives of queer people and racialized people. And sometimes when it comes to research, we get left to the side, and the focus tends to be on, our apologies, but white gay men tend to be at the center of research. And so I wanted to center people whose voices may sometimes get left out of those narratives. And so what I found was, when I first started doing it, I was like, I'm going to research a bunch of racialized, mostly when I say racialized men, for my research was Black, queer, and gay men, and Asian gay men. And so what I found was that when I was telling people about this, what they were saying was that Black people don't get ready for Pride, or like Asian people don't get a Pride body for Pride. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're gay men. Like, these are men too. Why would people only think that white gay men would be interested in working out? And I thought that was really surprising.
So one thing about just getting fit for Pride is this notion of like pressure that people might feel that not a lot of us do. Is it a lot of us? Would that be fair to say?
I would say there's a section of the community that feels there's a part of the queer community, a part of the gay community live toward this idea of an aesthetic being part of how Pride works or how gay culture works. And so what I found was that there's sort of like this idea, and what I called it was a gay social capital, where for a certain group of gay men, there is a certain aesthetic, a physical aesthetic, that grants you a certain access, a more VIP access that allows you to bigger parties or better sexual or social interactions. So the kind of people that some people might lust for or admire or want to associate with, this new aesthetic will gain them access to that VIP group, this kind of thing. And so I think that wanting or desiring that is not a bad thing, or wanting to be a part of is not a bad thing, especially for queer people when we feel so left out of. But some of the lengths that some people are willing to go to in order to get this could be perceived as negative or positive, depending on.
And would that include like the use of, for instance, anabolic steroids, or would that be, have something to do with dieting, or is it kind of all of the above when people are doing their preparations?
Yeah, so I found that, so I didn't ask about that particular thing specifically, because I wanted to make it through ethics review safely and not talk about. I also didn't want the narrative of my research to be, I'm researching basically a bunch of drug addicts, but a bunch of black men or Asian men that are just drug addicts.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is not our narrative.
Yeah.
That's not the one I want to sell.
Yeah.
But participants did speak of their experiences with other people in the community that they are part of, where they talked about how they feel the pressure. There's a certain pressure to look a certain way. And the certain way that they were talking about was trying to look like white gay muscle men. And they felt like they had to look like them or be them in order to fit in. And one of them, participants said that, no matter what he does, no matter how muscular he gets, no matter how big he gets, he's never going to be white. He
True.
can change his muscles till the cows come home, but he'll never be able to change his skin.
Right.
And it was just such a really, and it's surprising because this particular individual is like 6'4", he weighs like 280, 290 pounds. Like, men drool over him, and he's like, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be one of them.
Yep.
And I thought that was really interesting because it's like, this whole idea of seeking this aesthetic as a lifestyle choice is, again, and I want to make sure it's very, like, I don't think it's anything wrong with that. I think, as a researcher, as an anthropologist in this field, as a social anthropologist or social researcher, I'm fascinated with, like, why someone might do what they do. I really want to make sure that I'm selling their voice correctly and not judging it with outside things. But as also a member of the same community, I already had probably biased or unbiased opinions about my own ideas. And so I really wanted to set them aside and make sure that I showed up and was representing people correctly, and also what their thoughts were. And so there was a lot of challenge when it comes to, like, this aesthetic that people are seeking is expensive. You need a trainer, you need a gym, you need other things. Some people go beyond. They get cosmetic work done. They get, like, filler put in. They get injections of other things put into their body, not just steroids or any kind of what's it called? Growth hormones or therapy, like the HRTs, I think.
Right.
Hormone replacement therapy. Or replacement therapy, not even hormones.
Yeah.
Like TRT or any kind of, like, SARMs or things that people are using these days. AAS was another term that people use. But what I think is really key is that a lot of the people I researched, they were like, they know all this. They know that this is happening. They know that there's pressure to be these things. And some of them are like, this is a day-to-day life. This is a 24/7 that I don't know why the people I chose. I only chose people who they chose this as a day of life. Sure, some of them put in extra work to get ready for Pride. Some people, Pride was a goal, but not everybody. There was one person that Pride was a goal for them, but out of the people that I researched, but a predominant number of them, it was a 365-day lifestyle choice where they chose to work out as part of their routine. One of them called it, like, it's like getting your engine repaired. Like, to keep a good running engine, you need to keep it maintained. And so he talked about the gym as a maintenance routine. Like, this is my way of maintaining mental health, maintaining my body. And quite a few of them also mentioned mental health as reasons for going or reasons for being there. which was interesting because at the same time, in the months leading up to Pride, there are these periods where there's a mental health thing where they're sitting in the gym and they're seeing themselves in the mirror, they're seeing themselves represented, they're also seeing the people around them, and some of the participants are like, yeah, and they're preparing their minds for Pride, and they're preparing their psyche for what's about to take place. Because what's challenging for racialized men who work out is that there comes with their muscularity sometimes a fetishization or a tokenism of their aesthetic, that people want, like, you know, a hot Asian ass or like big black muscles, or they want, and they also put them into different categories, which was really interesting, that Asian men were automatically put into this submissive bottom category, whereas black men were automatically subsumed into a dominant top category. And then one of my participants is like, it might be true. Actually, one of the black men and one of the Asian men is like, yeah, that might be true. I might be a sub-bottom Asian and I might be a dom black top, but I can't just assume that I am because of what I look like. Right. You just assumed by looking at me. You didn't actually ask any questions. And therein lies part of the challenge, is like being accepted as I am as a person, rather than as, like, you know, an archetype that you want to that can be consumed.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well, on that note, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll kind of dig deeper into the reasons where those pressures come from. So just a sec. I wondered if you had any like insight into where do we get this like overwhelmingly white narrative that a lot of my racialized communities might feel like they need to fit into?
I mean, well, first of all, you were just talking about wrestling, and I immediately remembered there was one wrestler whose power move was taking his ass and sitting on the guy's face. And you're like, and then they would be like, you know, all upset about it. And I'm like, I don't understand. What's the punishment? That looks like a happy place. I don't understand. It's the majority of the culture that we live in. And so sometimes when we're, I was going to say indoctrinated, when we are surrounded, when we are immersed is a better word, in a community where we only see, or certain voices or certain ways only get uplifted around others for so long, that after a while you start to think that that's the only way to be normal, like air quotes normal, and then you start to want to try to be like that, and that you don't get to see your own self represented in these types of things. Like again, one of my participants was like a 6'5" Asian muscle man who was huge. He's taller than you, Jordan. You're freaking tall.
I'm big.
And he's taller than you, and you're just like, and you're just like, he goes against what the stereotype looks like, the aesthetic that is come for. And so you're just like, when you start seeing different people and talking to different types of individuals, you realize that these things can be a little bit broader. So when you've got a dominant culture that's always dictating to the rest of us what we're supposed to be, it really doesn't lend itself to having... well, it tends to be really homogeneous, which is all one way of looking at something. And that the variety or the options start to look limited, that this is the only way. And so what I like is that I think my participants are aware of this. They know that there is something very... the homonormative about being muscular within the gay community. However, and they're aware of it, so they're reflexive on this. They understand what is being embodied when they don the same body. But how it fits in their body is different, because white people don't, or white muscular men don't get all categorized as the same person. They still get to be individuals. Whereas I think for racialized people, they get stereotyped or categorized into different iconic looks.
Types. In
my undergrad research, I did something on Guys Next Door, on the Scruff app. Which I would love to talk about as a whole different topic. Oh my God, I still to this day, what is a guy next door? I don't like. But the neat thing about a guy next door, because it's basically a non-marked character. It's an unmarkedness.
Like
That's
a
yeah.
normal in quotes, or just blank slate.
A researcher named Jacobson would have called it unmarkedness.
Unmarkedness.
Unmarkedness, so that it has no. So what's wonderful about being unmarked is that anything that has a mark on it, that in one way or another, will stand out with someone who's unmarked.
And what's an example of a mark?
So like someone who's really tall. So if you're an average height, an average weight, and an average thing, then if you're with someone who's tall, then you look like you're the short. But if you're with someone who's below average short, now you're tall. So it's an unmarked term. So a guy next door is an unmarked phrase. But what was interesting in my undergrad research was that racialized people did not get considered to be guys next door. Guys next door were considered white.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're the default, I guess, in some ways.
So that if you're black, you don't get to be ordinary.
Yeah, that's not an option that you have. Yeah.
If you're Asian, some Asian people got considered as guys next door, but black people, black men specifically, did not get to be considered ordinary people who would live next door to you.
Yeah.
And that is messed up, because like they live next door to other people all the time. Like the whole phrase means someone who lives next door. The only way you could not be a guy next door is if you lived in a forest by yourself.
Yeah,
so,
you got to live somewhere.
I don't get that. But that's a different topic. So what I thought, because of that markedness, like so when we're looking at racialized men with muscles, that they are still don't get to be average people with a name. They are in like an icon. They are now considered these tokened positions, and that people, especially around pride, sometimes feel like they have agency to touch or comment or do things with them in a way that they wouldn't with muscular white men.
Where do you think that authority comes from? Or is that just the overarching theme of not embracing somebody's humanness and thinking about people as token subjects when you're in the scene?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a complex question.
It is really. I guess I don't know why someone thinks they can get away with what they can get away with.
Yeah.
If I did, then I'd be able to explain why white people will walk up to black women and touch their hair.
Sure.
Or like why people would feel like they have the right to someone else's space.
Yeah. And we see that in kink and fetish communities also. That's another thing too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but yet we know that we have but we know do we have to consent with certain people, but other people we don't, or around this certain time of the year consent goes out the window.
Yeah.
So I don't know why people do this.
Yeah.
I do know it happens. I know that it happens because the people that I spoke with told me about it, and I believed them. Why would you, at this point, why would you make it up? Especially, I paid nobody for any of the work that I did. I really wish I could, but I didn't. I did it all for free. They did it all for free and were willing. And I even feel bad that sometimes I'm speaking on behalf of people, and I'm getting notoriety and I'm I want to uplift the community, but also make sure I'm not speaking on behalf of. And so, how do we make sure that their stories are told or their voices are uplifted, and making sure, but not taking away their voice, and so when I was quoting people, I let them choose if they wanted to be named, if they wanted an assumed name, or if they wanted to pick a name. In my work, I wanted to make sure that, because I think a lot of, as one of my participants, Carl, said, that black men lose their agency and lose their voice, and so I wanted to make sure that their voices were heard, and that were represented in the work that I did. Because it would be, for me, it would be wrong to try to talk about the problems that they're going through and then creating the same problem.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, well, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the future of Daniel's work and a follow-up. So stay tuned. Okay, we're back. So I've got one last question for Daniel. So Daniel, you've done all of this research across all these different communities on the notion of pride and fitness and also just physical identity. So where do you see your research taking you next?
So that's a good question. My idea right now this could change, but I have this idea of doing, again, I want to stay with racialized queer people, within health and fitness. I like bodybuilding or weightlifting as the tool for that work. So I have this idea of the 2026 Gay Games in Valencia, Spain, being as a destination site for my work and sort of competing for Team Canada in either bodybuilding or powerlifting.
Sure.
And you can tell by my voice that I'm not sure how that's going to go. I already told my trainer, I was like, so is there a way I can be a power lifter in 3 years? I don't know. But it would be really neat. I've also looked at wanting to broaden it, not just men and the gender being not specific. I'm really looking at, there's a queer and there's a trans bodybuilding and powerlifting association in the United States based in Atlanta, and I want to get in contact with them. I already know one of them. Their members, we met through Instagram, and I actually quoted some of her work in my research. She's doing research in gender studies in her Ph.D. or their Ph.D. in Atlanta, and I wanted to use their work. I used their work in my master's, and I wanted to get their opinion and ideas and information for my PhD. I also have this idea of doing something, the Gay Asian Games, which is like a bodybuilding contest only in Asian countries. And I thought about that as an idea. I also thought about the gay lifting, which is, there's a gay lifting, powerlifting association that's filmed and does work in the UK as an idea source. So I had a lot of ideas, and then my supervisor, Dr. Janelle Joseph, was like, you gotta pick one. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yep. Yeah, so I'm thinking it's gonna be Gay Games, Valencia, Spain. Fits really well, nicely into my PhD.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like event-based work. So this is a bigger event, different kind of event.
Right.
And then, getting a free trip to Spain
It would be nice.
just an accident. And also becoming a medalist, becoming a Canadian athlete, a gay athlete.
Yeah.
Fuck my drag. That would be really amazing, wouldn't it?
And eventually the foremost expert on queer athletics in Canada.
That's crazy. No, not in Canada.
In the world.
Dr. Judy Davidson, I love you, in Alberta. Traverse in BC. There are some already great queer Canadian researchers. I've looked them up, and there are not very many, but they are strong. They're not male in our country so much, women and non-binary, and quite a few trans men or non-binary researchers like Ali Gray, also from U of T, doing some amazing work. And I would love to be up there with them. I would love that my work is highlighted, and I'm really grateful to be included in a conversation on that. That is not where I thought my path was going in life. Like, Jordan, we've known each other for years. Did you know that this is where I was heading? I didn't.
Nope.
And here we are, and I have a seat at the table. I am a research fellow in the Ideas Lab, Indigeneity, Diaspora, Equity, and Anti-Racism in Sport Lab, under the leadership of Dr. Janelle Joseph in the Kinesiology Department at U of T. And I am in awe that, I have a seat there and I can do the research that affects our communities, and that I can uplift it, and that I can draw attention to it, and that I can get more work about the stuff that we do, that we value in our lives. Some other things that I'm working on right now as a side project, there's some work that I'm going to be doing on queer gay hockey with one of my committee members from York. And we're in the talks, so I don't want to give too much. We're in the talks to do it, but I've read something really interesting. She was saying something really interesting to me about she competes in a hockey league where there's several trans women hockey goalies.
Okay.
And I was like, and she was like, well, that's a good position because maybe they don't have to worry about their body and checking in space. And I was like, But the psychology of a goalie is a different kind of hockey player than a goalie, like a person on the. So to be a series of trans women who like having pucks launched at them.
Yeah.
What does that say about them collectively as a group?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to find out. So that is not where I thought I would be studying, but I'm excited if these women want to talk to us and we get to like, let me follow you around and take notes. That would be, I love that.
That would be great.
That would be great. I would love it. I would love it. I'm like, there's so much. Oh my God. I know a hockey goalie. She's like my bestie.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And where can our listeners find you if they wanted to learn more about you or your research?
So I think I have Instagram. It's Fleximistic. And I don't know where you can find me. I don't know. And then my website is www.danielui, that's uy.com. And that will be updated with research information and my CV and all that soon. But yeah, I'm also going to be presenting some research. Well, it'll be after this. So I just presented some research at the North American Society of the Sociology of Sport in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I just won the Barbara Brown Outstanding Paper Award for my research work on racialized queer men in lifting that I just talked to you about.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's a pretty prestigious award, and it puts me with a group of very elite people in the field of sport research. And bitch, we're fucking there. My name is there, and we're there, and they love what we're talking about. Like what we just spoke about today, they want to hear more of, and I'm like, amazing. So it's our time, it's my time, and I love it.
And you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, it's been a great episode, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.